So, good morning and welcome to today's webinar. The topic is for this webinar series is License Secure, the enterprise PLM suite from Dassault Systems for device development. Today's topic is on global change management. So it's really the core of PLM. So global change control, which is the definition or the product definition, the buildup of parts and bill of materials, the WIV specifications, and the release process to manage any changes on that product definition. So what I'd like to do today is to introduce you to the functionality. As of today, we'll stick fairly close out of the box to give you an idea of the functionality. It should be pointed out when Technia implements engineering change management or global change control, we do this with some level of configuration and customization for each implementation. So we use, for example, our Technia value components quite extensively. But what we have decided to do today is to keep the implementation and the demonstration very close and strict to out of the box. Just to give you an idea of the core flow from a conceptual bill of material to an as designed bill of material to start of production and release of the manufacturing bill of material and the release of the DMR. So that's a basic point of departure for today's demonstration. Before getting started, I just would like you to give an idea of where we've been with this webinar series. So we started off in November in design controls. Since then, we've passed by the quality processes, so complaints, COPPA, NCRs. We've had a session on controlled documents, which is electronic document management, which is also typically a part of this process, the change process. We have gone through an overview on the regulatory filing module, which covers submissions and generation of device identifiers. We have passed by topics such as materials compliance, which is a subset for product compliance, covering areas such as RoHS, REACH, and conflict minerals. We went into depth about complaint management, creation of complaints, basic trending, and the adverse events reporting, which is a continuation of reporting on complaints on with some severe impact on patients. And also with this, we touched upon the COPPA topic. We had a separate session on requirements traceability, which is the definition of or deriving the requirements out of a functional spec, which might be a document file, then detailing the requirements and then connecting them with the appropriate validation. Last session was revisiting design controls and the DHF buildup. And as mentioned, today is global change control. Since we're covering the topic of change control today, we'll cover BoM and DMR, and that's where we spent most of the modeling time. So if we look at the overall view on the product definition, we've said at any point in time we want to understand the exact relevant product definition we need to understand from a regulatory point of view and from a business point of view. And that's not item number 1 on the left hand side here. We also would like to understand the compliance status and where we are with regards to compliance status at any point in time. Um, and of course, we would like to understand any connection to ongoing development projects, so we know what we can affect and what's the status of change on a specific product or a specific part. Today's main focus is on item number one, which is the product definition, where we review the breakdown of the regulatory product. It has relevance because that's the BoM is also the foundation for the DMR, and typically it's a DMR which we refer to in our concessions or our NCRs. So everything is interlinked and connected. So change management, what is the scope? So of course it is to build a product definition from a conceptual bill of material, which is perhaps something I set up in my CAD system to start with, up until the release of the device master record. And it is the bill of material, including any specification, and with that also any CAD drawings or CAD models. So it's really the core product definition. The functionality provides proper tools to synchronize the CAD bill of material, say refer to this as the conceptual design BoM, to an eBoM, which is as designed, to a manufacturing bill of material, and to the complete DMR. What we need for change management and change control is our change orders and our change actions. So a change order is the formal placeholder for a change where we say this is the change we want to perform. It might be a replacement of some parts. It might be a grouping of some proposed changes into different activities. Depending on what kind of change we perform, we define and we might have different templates for change actions. And those of you who are already familiar with Enovia 2013 and older releases will see some changes in the demonstration today, because we're using the latest change control model with change objects and change actions, which was introduced with 2014X. The change control consists of the change objects, the change actions, and then the roll-up behavior to release different parts to guarantee that we release the parts bottom up, where we start with the leave nodes, for example, a particular part somewhere deep down in the structure or a specification, and we have to take this up to a certain level before we can release any parts or specifications on higher levels. We also have the functionalities and capabilities for collaboration. With all the change process is about making decisions on changes, and we need proper tools for kind of collaboration for review and approval. We won't go into that much depth on the collaboration, but at least we'll follow through a review and approval sequence, just so we understand, okay, this is how we exchange the different change actions and tasks we have with that. Because each and every change action becomes a task which I can reassign or assign to whoever is the right person to execute that change task. If it's a redesign, if it's a qualification of a new production line, if it's qualification of a new set of validation routines. Of course, this is the basic functionality for revisions and for implementing any change. It might be a larger change which is driven by a new design or a change of a complete product line, or a minor change with just a minor revision. So these are the basic mechanisms we use for any such changes. It provides tools to determine what's the affected scope, which items, parts, specifications will be replaced with what, so we can understand, of course, the technical implications of the change. But of course, it also involves the review of any financial implications of a change. How do we deal with the remaining stock? How do we deal with any parts which are phased out? And how do we deal with the phase-in of the new parts? So these are the typical topics to cover. So why do we do this as part of PLM? Of course, and why do we do it as part of the License Secure Suite? And key message here is that we want to have this integrated with our product compliance tools and our materials compliance status. So we, at any point in time, when we're working with the parts, when we're working with the product definitions, know what's the current compliance status of the parts we're working with. So if I have that information when I'm exchanging parts, I know from start what's the compliance status and what are the relevant activities I need to take this updated part through a review sequence. Do I need to revalidate the supplier? Do I need to launch any audits for these suppliers? Has it already been validated? What's the status of concessions or past deviations? Have they been resolved in a proper way? These kind of questions are parts I want to answer as soon as I review a part as part of the PLM platform. Also, I want to have immediate access to design controls. What was the intended use? What's the history of this design? Who was involved? Who made what decision and why? And I want to have that with me. And as pointed out, I want to have the history and legacy of the quality processes, so I know this specific supplier, what's their quality record. For this particular part. Was there a cap in the past? How was that resolved? Was it resolved properly? And how does that rhyme with the now current change? How have we considered the same kind of changes and risk analysis as part of this new change? I also want to have it integrated with requirements traceability, and of course that's an integral part of the design controls. So I know this was the basic requirements, these were the detailed requirements, are they still valid even if I implement this change? And can I trace it back to the tests, or do I need to rerun some test and validation following this change? And if so, what kind of test and regression analysis should be rerun? So I really want to have that kind of answers at the tip of my fingers when I do the change planning and change execution. And that's really when my change management becomes efficient. And that's really the core of running change management in PLM. So what kind of functionality and what kind of processes do we then work with? So this is our overall view of a development project, different functions and tasks we're going through. And we detail it down to some of the, specifically the development, qualification, post-launch behavior, or processes, sorry. So we're looking at the design and development phases when we detail a part, detail a design. All going through the design reviews, all the preparations as part of the design input phase. But also for the design transfer to follow through with the overlap or the handover between the development projects, between the design engineers and the production engineers for the production ramp up. It also has perfect relevance for the post-launch activities. So assume that I've launched a CAPA, I've understood the kappa and I realize this is a change required to implement this kappa, then this is the change procedure I'd like to run through and go through. For the DMR, this is the traceability on the DMR which I have with me all through the design. And the whole essence here is to have a complete sync between the EBOM and the DMR. So whatever changes I perform, those are always reflected immediately into the device master record. Okay. This is just a breakdown on the different topics. We're covering the design with regards to the parts, bill of materials, and the relevant specifications, CAD drawings. For the design reviews, it's the distribution of tasks for the design reviews, so review and approve. For the design transfer, it's focus on the manufacturing bill of material. Have I defined my sequences? Are those properly set up? Are my different sites properly set up? And have I completed my process validation? For the product enhancements, it's a question of the design updates and the functionality for this. And this is, of course, also reflected in the DMR, which is typically managed by the production teams. Okay, but with that, we'll go through a scenario. In this case, we'll follow Philip, which is a design lead, and his work with completing the bill of material, reviewing the change, and reviewing the assignments for the change. It's his suggestion for a design change. And these design changes will be reviewed through the organizations where it's peer review by a design engineer who is part of the release process for the design changes. In this case, it's also an update of the validation instructions. So it's a document release connected to this. And this is a document release performed within the contents of the DMR. We'll briefly touch upon the topic because there are several ways in License to Cure and in this suite to implement control documents. When the review has been done, it goes through approval for a quality lead, for example, and after that we release the change. When we've gone through the design release, it's followed by the manufacturing release. So these are typically the steps we want to complete. So I'll jump down out of the presentation, and I rather jump into a demo environment. So in this case, I'm in the 3D Experience platform. I will actually run this through a animation. It's a little bit faster, and this covers a few detailed tasks, so this will be a faster exercise. So this is what the UI looks like when I log on to the system, assuming that I'm a design lead. I'm driving CAD designs or breakdowns of the product definition. And at the tip of my finger, I have the parts definitions, the specifications, the routings, the change objects, and collections, where collections are collections of the different parts with relevant specifications. So groupings of relevant parts of my product definition. In this specific case, we're looking at an AED defibrillator, which is called autosave part. We're looking at the top node here and all its underlying subassemblies. At the bottom of my screen here, I have my to-do lists, my tasks, routes, and issues. The tasks are tasks assigned to me, and I can see here if they're green or red. So these are the activities I need to perform. So that's where we start off. So I drill down into my design, and in this case I navigate to the product, a device, and I have some details on that product here. For those of you who followed this webinar series, you will be familiar with this defibrillator. It's part of the product line which we've been reviewing both in the design controls and in other in the quality processes. So I navigate to the engineering bill of material, and this is the breakdown of the bill of material. This is where I have my different subsystems. It might be the lid, it might be the body. I have an electrical system. Besides the bill of material, I have my specs and documentation, and in this part I only had the CAD drawings. I also have my inspection routes and the inspection specifications. So all of the details here I have at the tip of my fingers. The routings for different sites, for different work centers as they're referred to today. So here I can see the assemblies, and in this case I navigate over to the change, because that's what I want to change in this particular example. What I did was I selected on the change order for one of the assembly routines. So we're looking at the typical change of an assembly. The details I have here is some basics on the change order, which typically covers the nature of the change. What does it contain? What do I want to do? And of course, what kind of audit trail I have. With this, I also have some basic commands on the change order. Transfer of ownership, if I want to stop, distribute, and edit. I also here clearly see the life cycle. So at the basic change processes to take this change order through the different stages here. And I can see if I have any tasks assigned in the different stages. So we haven't come that far in this specific change order. Status is still gray. It hasn't really got started. It is a formal change. And it's quite an extensive change. It's actually a review for a new product introduction for a specific site. Under the change order, I have the details, the contents of the change. So here I have listed all the affected items. So this is what I look into when I want to understand the change. And as you could see here, it is quite an extensive change. All the parts, sub-assemblies, specifications which are affected by this particular change. I have the affected items, I have the candidates which will be introduced, and those which are replaced. So and we can see that anything related to the DMR might be involved in this specific change here. So with this new model for change orders, I have the different change questionnaires which I could introduce. So these are templates for my changes. For larger changes, I might set up a checklist of questions which I need to go through and respond to. And whatever answer I log here will of course be logged to my audit trail. So I have this clearly visible, any design related decision or any production related decision relevant for this new product introduction. In this specific role, I set up and review. I might read in a template, but then I set up the different rules and responses. Navigating, have a closer look at the change actions here. This is just a subset and a small part. Each and one of those are actual tasks. So within the change action, it's described who is supposed to do what, who is responsible for this action, in which list, and is there a defined deadline for the action. So if we navigate into one of these actions here, I also here see all the affected items. I see the details for the action. I can see who's responsible. And from here I can navigate back to the change object, and on the change object I see, okay, what's the status of the life cycle of this change order. And this, under the change order, I also define the effectivity of any specs involved or any items involved. So I can really define the have good control on the actual change. So in this fashion, I log to the route, and I promote the, or what I did was I promoted the change to be in review because I want to have a specific review. And I log on and approve the review since I have that role and responsibility. Of course, signatures here are all Part 11 compliant, so to be able to reflect the change properly in the DMR. So I have promoted and reviewed the promoted the change action. I've logged in as Thomas, the design engineer, and I go in and start my work. When done with the work, I promote it up to approved, and with that I make a mass promotion of all the contents, assuming that I'm done with my changes and understood all their details. So when doing so, it really goes through the complete structures, bottom up, and make sure that everything is in the proper state. And this is what's reflected here, as we can see here in the everything is in review, and I can properly perform the approval here. I go back to my change action, and standing on the approval stage, I promote it up to completed to indicate that this change action, even though quite extensive, is now fully completed. If I look at the contents, the change object here has actually taken all the contents up to release. I log in as Katie. She's a manufacturing specialist, and she has the task of approving the manufacturing review. So in a similar fashion, she will go in and review the task which is assigned to her. She clearly states that the change action is in work, so everyone knows that she's working on that. She reviews the relevant inspection specifications, and log out. The next one in the route to review this change is the quality lead, David. And when he receives the task, he reviews the change order and see that it is up for review, and it's up to the quality specialist or a quality lead here to review the change from a quality perspective. Have we followed the proper quality processes and protocols in order for this change to be taken forward? And the task is approved, and then the quality lead went to the order and approved the task there. It then goes back to the initial creator, Philip, to review the tasks everyone has been performing, to review the quality assessment, and perform the final review approval. Log in with the username, password, signs in, and the change order has been taken up to completed. So that was an extreme fast forward on quite an extensive change, where we go through the complete roll up of all of a bill of material. From here, I have the capabilities of taking it forward as a manufacturing change order. So this is a handshake for the design transfer. So in a similar fashion as the change order, I take this through a manufacturing approval process. So I create the manufacturing change order and define the design responsibility in this case. Might be the main factory site for this manufacturing approval. And I assign the different roles, both engineering roles and manufacturing roles. And I select done, which means that the manufacturing ECO has been is now available, so I can start defining the change. Since it's a manufacturing change, I want to, of course, start with determining the relevant product definition. So I continue in this 9300 autosave. And instead of working on the bill of material, I work with the manufacturing details. And I start with assigning the site of manufacturing responsibility. So I have two different sites which will be part of this manufacturing ramp up. And it's Vellecy and then in Walton. I save that definition. And I route the decision for review and approval. So it's the first approval is done by myself as Kathy as a manufacturing specialist, and I just sign in to have the proper. Okay, it's then released for change towards these two specific sites. and it's automatically generating one separate change object for each site, as you can see here. And based on the same basic MCO details, it takes these two different objects forward. And this is, of course, I will typically have for each and every site, I will have there a specific approval procedure and specific impact details. So that's why I need these specific change objects. Okay, I'm reviewing the affected parts, and in this case, I'm working with the plant-specific BoM to start with, and I want to review both the current and coming bill of materials, which are destined for this site. And I assign them to the change object. So besides the bill of material, I'm also adding any manufacturing material, supports and tooling parts, which are unique for that specific site. Those are added to the BoM, and those were the ones which were added. Some of them I need to add phantoms for this manufacturing sequence. So I need specific manufacturing parts for some subsets of the bill of material. So I create these phantoms to reflect my manufacturing process. I can see how I've added my different material parts and support and tooling parts here. If I go to the other side, I am reviewing the change for that side as well. And also here, I want to do a site-specific add-on of some material tooling and support parts. So I have a preset of material parts or relevant BoM parts. And I create also for this site some specific phantoms. So this is fast forward for the BoM modeling, just to show some of the capabilities to set up the manufacturing bill of material, continuing from an engineering bill of material. And as you can see here, we have the tools for the BoM, and we connect it to the manufacturing change object continuously. Okay, so assuming that I'm satisfied with this setup, it seems that it's properly reflected all through the DMR with the relevant specifications. Then I'd like to define the effectivity for the specifications, and this is the what I used was the new effectivity editor to set up the effectivity for the different sites for the DMR for the relevant specifications. So that was an extreme fast forward of the change management capabilities, which is part of the license to cure. This demo was set up to cover really the basic of the product definition. So we worked primarily with the BoM and DMR. But of course, you can extend that to the CAD and the CAD sync. You can extend it to the complete DMR with the relevant specs. And the functionality is available to synchronize from initial conceptual design up until the complete DMR. Not saying that the core function or the complete change should be implemented in one go, but it has the capability to cover a complete chain from initial conceptual design to the actual representation of the device master record. The changes are controlled through change objects in the engineering domain. We have change actions or change activities, which are tasks, which are to be performed to implement the change. And we connect them and we release them as part with proper bottom-up behavior. And we saw also in the demonstration a similar example with the manufacturing change object. Focus was on the reviewals and approvals, but there's also rich functionality for collaboration, understanding, discussing about the changes, subscribing on changes, communicating changes, chatting on or debating designs and decisions. The whole idea is to be able to revise the design, either it's a new development or a more mature design. The essence is of course in the change impact analysis, to be able to connect the change process to the complete history and design controls, to see all parts and the complete design with regards to the current compliance status. If you have a quality history, you want to have that information immediately available in the environment where you execute the change. Same is true if you have your requirements and your test validation risks defined in the license to cure. You want to relate back to those basic requirements and understand, do we reflect still the initial requirements, or do we need to detail the requirements further as part of the change process? So it's really functionality at the heart of PLM, connected to all other processes which have been on display on this webinar series actually. Okay, so with that extreme fast forward through a change process, the intention here was to give you a hint, an idea. Usually, especially the change process or processes which we adopt to specific purposes, we have predefined templates on specific changes to set up tasks, and of course these has to be synchronized with the new product introductions, which we reflect in design controls, or the changes which we trigger from our quality processes or in our revisions. So these were the steps we went through, everything from, on the left hand side, the modeling of the bill of material, all through the change cycle with the complete change on the parts, the specs, any documentation, and having this approved and released. Fast forward, but I hope it has been a good introduction. As mentioned, for those of you new to 14X, you have been also seeing the capabilities and the layout on the change object and the change actions. If you would like to revisit this webinar, it's available on our webpage under the License to Cure event page. There you will find this enemy or this presentation and webinar later on today. For the webinar series, we're actually coming to an end. The last webinar for this time in the series will be in 2 weeks' time, April 28th, where we go into depth on the UDI topic to see how UDI functionality capabilities do actually work and how do they relate to the change control capabilities. We will also then revisit the regulatory status of UDI. So it will be a good recap of the UDI topic, because that's a topic which we'll go deeper into in later sessions. What also has happened over the last few months, or the last month, is that we've released 15x. So we would like to take the whole webinar series to the new release, to 15x. And when we have made that update, we will continue with a similar webinar series with a similar scope, but we will then go deeper into each and every topic. But you can expect that one of the earlier sessions will be a refresh update on the new functionality in 15x, whether it's related to the regulatory filing functionality, the COPPA, where we've seen quite some dramatic change in 15x, to also the aspects covered today with design controls. Let's meet up in the next webinar session, a deep dive on the UDI topic in PLM, where we'll scrutinize the solution, how far and how mature is the solution as part of License to Cure, and what kind of challenges do we face as of today as part of implementations. With that, I close today's session. You'll find this webinar suite under the events page on the Technia webpage. My name is Pedro Salin, and I was your host today. I will be your host tomorrow at our session in Copenhagen, and the next session, 20th of April, focusing on UDI. Thank you very much for today, and goodbye.